Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My interest in the history of any subject especially relates to finding concrete evidence of how matters really started, including how giving credit where credit's due. And in that vein, I would like to start with my talk on Samuel Ryder, and hope that you find food for thought on what I have to say. Photographs of Samuel Ryder may appear that he might look rather drab and miserable behind his bushy moustache. In reality, I believe he was a quiet, modest, and friendly fellow with a keen sense of humour. Samuel was born in Preston in Lancashire, but moved to Sale near Manchester, where his father started a market gardening business.
Peter, maybe stand up, I think. Could you stand up?
I don't want to have people's view, that's a problem.
No.
Here we see the Ryder family photographed in 1874, with Samuel Ryder, then aged 16, sitting in the front, surrounded by his parents, 5 sisters and 2 brothers. Brother James became a teacher, and brother John became apprenticed to a cabinet maker. Here we see Samuel Ryder Senior with his wife Elizabeth. And here we see Samuel's 5 sisters, 4 of which followed their mother into dressmaking, while the other sister became a teacher. And here's their family home in Wharf Road, Sale. It was a time when young Samuel was enthusiastic for the game of cricket, as both a player and as an occasional visitor to the Old Trafford ground. Samuel was a studious pupil, with maths being his favourite subject. His abilities got him to Owens College, seen here, now part of Manchester University. However, the stress of studies proved too much on a less than strong constitution, and he joined his father's business instead. In 1890, Samuel got married to Helen Barnard at a relative's mansion before the marriage was solemnised at this church near Braintree in Essex. And Samuel Ryder Jr. had the idea to sell penny packets of seed by mail order to brighten up the small gardens of working class folk, and accordingly he decided to leave his father's business and set up in a room over a hatter's shop here in the High Street in St Albans. His business moved a time or two, and this was his next business location at the old Presbyterian meeting house. He moved yet again to adapt the old Wesleyan Sunday School building, which later still became the offices of the local newspaper. Finally, in 1911, he had this fine edifice built in the heart of the city, with large warehouses to the rear. This is a Ryder's catalogue shortly afterwards, in which you can see the new building and pictures of Samuel Ryder Senior and Samuel Ryder Junior. And here is a trowel which his wife Helen used in the stone laying ceremony with a large Aberdeen granite block, and that ceremony took place in July of 1911. By the following December, the business was open for business. Here we see Samuel Ryder at his new office desk. And here we see the predominantly female staff of Ryder's busy at work. I might point out at this point that Samuel Ryder was amongst the first employers to pay sick pay long before the days of the welfare state, and he had never had reason to regret it. Here we see an advert from 1909 when the business was already getting known around the world. Here we see a fine colour advert of the Ryder business. During the 1920s, the Ryder catalogues were embellished with these fine colour plates from artist Winifred Walker. And here we see a Ryder seed packet, proudly showing the Ryder Cup at the top right of the packet. In 1931, Ryder paid for the land next door to his offices and decided to have an exhibition hall built there to showcase his business. And here we see the building both externally and internally. And here we see Samuel Ryder sitting in that hall on its opening day. Ryder's business presented gilt medallions like this to as prizes at horticultural shows around Britain. Samuel Ryder was a strong Christian, and in 1895, when he went to St Albans, he attended this Spicer Street chapel as a Congregationalist. However, when that building was proving not big enough for the increasing numbers, Samuel was the prime mover in getting this new church built, namely Trinity Congregational Church. And he paid for the house for the minister of that church, and here it is in this picture. Samuel Ryder was a great supporter of Sunday school education, and he presented this shield to the Sunday school in the region obtaining the highest exam marks. Samuel Ryder went into politics more as a sense of duty to his fellow citizens than any other reason. He chose the Liberal Party based in this building. And here we see Samuel Ryder second from the left in an election poster for the Liberal Party, sometimes known as the Progressives. Amazingly, within just 2 years of being elected to the council, he was chosen to be mayor. And in those days, at the age of 47, that was considered quite young. Might not be now. And here we see the most magnificent picture of Samuel Ryder in mayoral robes, as painted by local artist Frank Salisbury, which is now hanging proudly in the clubhouse of Birmingham Golf Club, St Albans. Meetings of the City Council were held in this building. And here we see Ryder's ex-mayor's badge of office, of which I'm now the proud owner. This leads me to the fact that Samuel Ryder was also a magistrate on the city bench, which led to possibly the most embarrassing moment of his life, because it was a time of suffragettes and passive dissenters. There was a disturbance in the street by a group which included his wife, and he was obliged to fine his own wife 10 shillings. I couldn't believe it when I read it in the local paper. Yeah, and accommodation-wise, when Samuel and family first moved to St Albans, they went into this modest house in Folly Lane. As the business gradually prospered, he went into bigger homes, and this was his next home round the corner in his Scarsdale house. And then he moved into this mansion. Unfortunately, you're going to see part of it, mansion and grounds of a small mansion known as Marlborough House, from where Samuel hosted fetes, bazaars, and especially concerts, where he was very musical. And he had this painting commissioned by Frank Salisbury of his 3 daughters, which is entitled The Playmates, I might point out. And here we see some of the family in the garden: Samuel, his wife Helen, and the 2 youngest daughters. And in this picture, in the same garden, the 2 eldest daughters. The eldest daughter, Marjorie, by all accounts, was a very competent performer on the cello. And outside the front door here, we have Sam Ryder's Rolls Royce with left to right, Samuel, eldest daughter Marjorie, actually christened Lucy, but they called her Marjorie, and then wife Helen with the grand hat. And there again there was a different name, although she was christened Helen, in the family and close friends called her Nellie. These things happen. And then of course to the right you've got the chauffeur. In retirement, Samuel moved for the final time to this house in Clarence Road called Stormwood Lodge. This is the man that we have to thank. Sorry to get emotional, but this is the man we have to thank for son Ryder playing golf. Reverend Frank Wheeler, his church minister at Trinity Congregational, he said to him, "What you need is fresh air and exercise. Come with me and play this game of golf." Shortly after that match, Samuel recruited this man to be his first golf coach, John Hill, a former resident of Musselburgh. And here we see Samuel practicing in his 300-acre garden. He got very keen and practiced 6 days a week, but never on a Sunday as a strict Christian. When he considered the time was right, he applied for membership in nearby Birham Golf Club. He was accepted as a successful businessman and paid 4 guineas for his first subscription. Within 4 years, Samuel was made captain of the club for the first time in 1912. And that year was very special to the club because it went from being a 9 holes to being extended to 18 holes. And here we see a special exhibition match to celebrate that occasion with, on the left, James Braid, the course designer and former Open champion at the time, playing against the then Open champion Harry Varden. That day Varden went round in 74 to Braid 77. Here we have James Ryder, Samuel Ryder's brother. He was forced to retire from teaching through ill health. However, it can't have been too bad because persuaded and financed, probably initially by his brother Samuel, he started his own mail order business, selling varieties of herbs to cure all manner of ailments. And they called the business Heath and Heather Limited. He was assisted full-time by his wife Alice, shown here, who had the grand title of Lady Superintendent. And the business started in 1920, and here in the late 20s, is a staff photograph with the Ryder brothers sitting in the front. The business did very well, and here we see a succession of the premises going from a big, to progressively bigger buildings, until eventually they had this gigantic 4-story warehouse built, the biggest in the city at the time. In the 1930s, they opened a retail shop in the city. Here's an advert for that. Now, James and Samuel Ryder were saddened by the lowly status of the golf club professional and decided to champion his cause. Accordingly, they sponsored 7 events within the space of 3 years during the mid-20s under the banner of Heath and Heather. And the first of these was the well-known 36-hole medal called the Heath and Heather tournament. For this, 48 of the country's leading professionals were invited, including 6 former Open champions. The event was unique because the professionals, for the first time in Britain, were paid for their accommodation and travel. And here we see the eventual winner, Arthur Havers, fresh from winning his Open Championship at Troon. And here in this rather grainy picture, we see Havers receiving his £50 prize out of a total fund of £500. The next Ryder Brothers sponsored event saw a 36-hole challenge match at Birham, in which Abe Mitchell defeated Charles Wick, who was seen there on the left, by 5 and 3. However, the significant part about this is the fact that you can see there the words that it says there. I couldn't believe it when I read it in the local paper. Heath and Heather were contemplating challenging the Americans who were coming over. And if that challenge was issued and accepted, Mitchell and Whitcomb would be asked to be in this team. And clearly an indication of what Sam Ryder had in mind for the future. The next Ryder event was a 72-hole challenge around the London courses of St George's Hill and Oxo, in which America played against Great Britain. America represented by Walter Hagen and MacDonald Smith, and Britain represented by Abe Mitchell and George Duncan. At the end of the 2 days play, the British pair were victorious by 4-3, giving up 4-2. The next Ryder event saw Abe Mitchell and George Duncan playing 36 holes of Verulam against the eldest Whitcomb brothers, Charles and Ernest, and the Whitcomb brothers won this by 2-1 to some people's surprise. And the next event was a challenge match between Abe Mitchell and Jim Barnes, fresh from his Open Championship victory at Prestwick. And Mitchell was in top form for this and defeated Barnes by 7-6, which caused a bit of a stir at the time. And from that same day, we see Jim Barnes here with Sam Ryder outside the Verulam Golf Clubhouse. Once again, I came across this interesting remark in the local paper, which clearly says here, and it's interesting to go with the date, Samuel Ryder and James Ryder, who originated the idea of an annual match between American and British golfers at front rank. Once again, an indication of Samuel's thoughts for the future. Again, another 4-ball match, this time Jim Barnes and Abe Mitchell playing together against Archie Compston and Ted Ray. And that match, over 36 holes, went to the last with Barnes and Mitchell being successful there at the last hole. The final Ryder event of the 7 was a playoff to decide the leading home player in the Open Championship. It was Ted Ray and Archie Compton had tied, and it was decided that they should battle at Verulam over 36 holes to see who took the trophy home. And Compton was victorious by 2-1. And James Ryder and Sam Ryder were together briefly going to sponsor Abe Mitchell for his golfing activities. But for some reason, James Ryder suddenly dropped out, and it was left to Samuel Ryder to appoint Abe Mitchell as his private professional. Their original agreement for 3 years was to pay Mitchell £500 a year with £250 in expenses. And here we see the impressive Abe Mitchell at a dress. Part of the arrangement was that Mitchell would move from his home in Kent to take up residence in St Albans. And here is his home in Cunningham Avenue, just a few hundred yards from Verulam Golf Club. For their holidays, the Samuel Ryder family went regularly to Weymouth and Dorset, staying at this hotel pictured here, the Royal Hotel, and attended services just round the corner at Gloucester Street Congregational Church, where wife Helen once opened a bazaar. Well, Samuel, each day there, used to go out to nearby Came Down Golf Club, where he became a country member. And he was impressed by the play of the Whitcomb brothers resident there. And here they are left to right, Charles, Ernest and Reg. He was very impressed, and Samuel asked Ernest at one point, if they ever played in the important tournaments. Ernest said that they rarely did. They could ill afford the unpaid time, and travel cost so much. Ernest continued, the Americans come over here, all smartly dressed and backed by wealthy supporters. The Britisher has a poor chance compared with that. And And then Samuel Ryder's daughter Marjorie takes up the story with privately printed booklets that she had produced. And in that, here's a page from one of those which clearly indicates how Sam Ryder first conceived his idea of the Ryder Cup by his visits to Camden Golf Club. Ernest Whitcomb's depressing comments has touched a raw nerve with Samuel, and he longed for a level playing field so that British players could compete on the same terms as the subsidised Americans. Accordingly, he had spoke to Abe Mitchell and George Duncan, and so the Ryder Cup was conceived there, and decided to donate the trophy there and then. And this letter here to a golf magazine from one of Sam Ryder's caddies at Camden Golf Club confirms the fact on how it was conceived. This gentleman later became a golf professional himself in Winchester. Here we see the Times getting the message that Samuel Ryder was about to present a cup for international competition. And here is the international match that took place at Wentworth in 1926 between Great Britain and America. The captains shown here, George Duncan on the left and Walter Hagen on the right. And here was the Abe Mitchell hitting the opening tee shot at Wentworth that day. And here is the overwhelming victory for Britain by 13-1. That this report here from Golf Illustrated is interesting because it says quite clearly here that the Cup was not going to be presented as many of the press thought at the time, and they made the reason as being the ongoing general strike in Britain. However, it was doubtful that I don't think the Cup was ready, for one thing, and secondly, the American team was picked solely by Walter Hagen and not by the PGA of America. Shortly after, Samuel Ryder was back down at Camden Golf Club, taking Abe Mitchell with him to play an exhibition match with Reg Whitcomb, who had just become the club professional, whilst his brother Ernest had gone off to Merrick Park, Bournemouth. Here we see the players, Reg Whitcomb on the left and Abe Mitchell on the right. Mitchell won that contest by 5-4. When it came to the British Ryder Cup selectors, the task was given to the great triumvirate of golf. That's no surprise. This is Taylor, Braid and Varden. And here we see the Ryder Cup, made by Mappin and Webb and valued at 100 guineas in 1927. The figure on top of the Ryder Cup is generally believed to be Abe Mitchell. However, an American did thorough investigation with the Mappin and Webb firm and realised that the trophy was really a standard company model similar to this one produced for the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in the 1920s. Take questions later. Here we see the first evidence of the Ryder Cup in existence, when Helen Ryder is presenting the Cup to George Gadd as the chairman of the British PGA at that time. A significant point about this is that the Ryder Cup remains the absolute property of the British PGA, wherever it may be. That presentation took place at the occasion of this get-together by the players, most of the players who had played in a 36-hole warm-up match, which Charlie Whitcomb won immediately prior to them going off to America for the first Ryder Cup match. And here we see Samuel Ryder clutching his Homburg hat, bidding the team bon voyage as they went off to Worcester, Massachusetts. I'll tell you that scene in this old postcard is very much still the same scene as today. And they have there by the first tee a plaque displaying the names of all those players in that historic first Ryder Cup match. And And here we see American Johnny Farrell hitting the opening tee shot in Ryder Cup history on that first tee at Worcester. The lockers there still retain the names of all the players. And here we see Walter Hagen's locker, which is being used by some club member these days. 1927 saw the Ryder Cup being won by America by 9.5 points to 2.5, with British captain Ted Ray on the right presenting the cup to a delighted Walter Hagen. Strangely, for that first Ryder Cup match, the terms and conditions were not documented. So it was left to this man, Tom Anderson Davies, a young attorney and nephew of Samuel Ryder, to draw up that first deed of trust immediately after that first Ryder Cup match. 2 years later, he had to draw up a revised deed of trust. And here's a copy of the front page of that deed of trust. 1929, we go to Moortown, Leeds for the first match on British soil. Sam Ryder has the distinct pleasure of presenting the cup to the winning British captain George Duncan when they won that match by, I think it was 7 points to 5. And Samuel Ryder was absolutely delighted with the arrangements for that match, and gave a cheque to the head greenkeeper Abbott and presented this cup to the ladies section for their help with the event. This cup, I'm pleased to say, is now resident here at the museum. Is Sam Ryder and youngest daughter Joan off to a Ryder Cup match, although I'm not quite sure whether that was 1929 or 1933. Someone here might be able to tell me. We moved to 1931, Sam Ryder again wishing bon voyage to the British team as they went off to the Scioto Club, Columbus, Ohio, where they had to face the sweltering sun and are beaten by the Americans by 9 points to 3. Now we move to 1933 at Southport and Ainsdale Club, where we see Sam Ryder standing between the two captains. On the left, non-playing captain for Britain, J.H. Taylor, and on the right, Walter Hagen, the playing captain for America. By all accounts, the two captains detested each other to some extent. I think Sam did a good job to get them to even shake hands. Britain ended up winning that by just 1 point. Here we see the S&A clubhouse, as a lot of people call it, at that time in 1933. It was incredible how many sponsorships Ryder did for golf. I worked out once, I think he sponsored something like 17 events in his life, quite amazing. And in this one shown here, it's a reenactment of a match that took place in 1906 between England and Scotland. In this occasion, 20 years later, we have England represented by Messrs. Varden and Taylor playing against Sideker and James Braid for Scotland. And England won that rather conclusively by 10 and 9. I better not dwell on that up here in Scotland. The following year, Samuel Ryder sponsored an event for 12 up-and-coming young British professionals. And this ended in a tie between Bert Hodgson, seen on the left, and Jack White. Yeah. Anyway, I wasn't chain of thought. Jack Smith, that's right. Mixed up with other Jack. And then the following year, it was the most intriguing match when the senior professionals played the junior professionals. And the senior professionals had the last laugh because they won quite easily by 7 matches to 1 with 2 halved. And in this particular match here, you see in the screen, we've got a young Henry Cotney on the left playing the veteran J.H. Taylor, and Taylor was to win that by 2 up. The same year saw an unofficial British Coast Championship Ryder sponsored over 72 holes, and that also ended in a tie between Abe Mitchell on the left, and in this deciding match that was organised at Birmingham at short notice. Mitchell won that by 4 and 3, but I think the picture is quite interesting alone just to see Diogo's distinctive putting style. Samuel was a great Shakespeare enthusiast and regularly attended the Shakespeare festivals at Stratford, whether it was in the old Memorial Theatre, and even when that got burnt down, he attended the events at the new Memorial Theatre. And of course, he also got to play golf locally at the Stratford-on-Avon Club. Indeed, he became its captain and officially opened their new 18-hole course at Tiddington Road. Here he is on the right-hand side of the screen, just about to start things off. And he also arranged top-level golf matches at Stratford Club. And here we see Arthur Havers and Abe Mitchell playing against the two eldest Whitcombs, Charles and Ernest. And Havers and Mitchell won that by 4 and 3. But what intrigued me was to come across this cartoon of the match with the players in Shakespearean costume. Love that picture, so glad I found that. 1930, Samuel also hosted a complimentary dinner to thank George Duncan for his successful captaincy of the previous year's Ryder Cup match. Samuel had interest in Africa, and here we see him on the way to South Africa, where he discovered the Mzimbrianthnum hardy annual, of which the locals there had considered a weed. What did they know compared with Samuel Ryder? In 1929, Samuel paid £4,000 for a farm in Rhodesia when it was an enterprising time for settlement farms. Paid for the farm for his eldest daughter and son-in-law Leslie, and here we see Samuel on a visit to the farm, Atticus Blue Farm, relaxing with his son-in-law Leslie. And not surprisingly, he persuaded Leslie to take up golf. Leslie got very keen on the game. He was known to help with the development of this club shown here, the Hillside Club, and this is a picture from 1933. In 1933, the farmers there persuaded Samuel to donate a trophy for their annual golf event. And here it is, it's engraved as the Atticus Golf Challenge Cup, although sometimes nicknamed either as the Farmers' Cup or as the Untidy Ryder Cup. Samuel paid a visit there in 1934 and hosted a dinner for the president and golfing committee of the club. And here we see the menu and the toast list for that occasion. Here we see an older picture of Samuel as painted by Frank Salisbury, once again. And here we see an artist's sketch of Samuel Ryder done by Mel in 1935, just months before he died. He died in January of 1936, and here is his grave in Hatfield Cemetery at St Albans. After which his daughter Joan, shown here, took charge of both the Ryder businesses. I hope you can appreciate how Samuel's idea of the Ryder Cup gradually evolved, with the two key locations being Cane Down Golf Club in Dorset and Verulam Golf Club in Hertfordshire. Facts which the Wills media seem to ignore. I also hope that I've made clear why I think Samuel Ryder should be inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame under the Lifetime Achievement category. And I'd like to close by quoting a remark that Samuel Ryder made in 1931, or during the time of the Ryder Cup match that year. He said, "I've done many things in my life for the benefit of my fellow men, but I'm certain that I've never done a happier thing than this." Thank you, Sam, and thank you for listening.